Welcome to Punk Love and Compassion. On this, Clyde, you got involved in the greater punk hardcore scene up there in the late 80s, early 90s?
Early 90s. I want to say 92 was the first I was aware of.
Cool. Okay, so before we get too far into that, housekeeping things on my side. I know I say this every episode, but just to make sure you all still realize that, one, I am not a professional podcaster. I just think that a lot of people have stories out there, and those stories deserve to be heard, and that most people I'm talking to aren't like the big quote unquote like stars in the scene. It's like I said, everybody has a story to be told, and I think all those stories deserve to be heard. So this is heard. So this is the platform I've created for that. Going back to me not being a professional, you will probably hear my dogs barking in the background. I have a bunch of chickens living in my backyard. They come to the door and peck on the door sometimes. You probably hear that. I also have an 11-year-old, and I have a wife, and they often forget that I'm recording. Yeah, I think that's it for the housekeeping stuff. So we will start this. And to create a baseline like I do in every show, do you remember what the first punk song you ever heard was? What was it?
It was Rock and Roll High School by the Ramones. And it's cool. Early 80s. It was on regular television. I had no idea who these people were or what was going on. I was intrigued, and I remember that song. And I remember the first scene where they pull up and they're riding around like a drop-top caddy. They're the leather MCs, and they're eating chicken, and they're singing, and they pull up to the high school.
Awesome. So were you watching the movie and it came on, or did you see the video somewhere?
I was watching the movie and that came on.
Okay. Awesome. So you were actually watching Rock and Roll High School.
Watched the entire film.
Awesome.
I might have been about 8. 9.
Yeah. That's a good introduction. But how long after that did you become aware that there was a greater community scene?
Let's get even more basic. The thing that really intrigued me was the sound of an amplified, loud electric guitar. You put a loud guitar in something, and I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I'm listening. And there wasn't a lot of metal or punk on commercial radio, per se. Right. But the few songs that had Run DMC, big example, a bunch of their first few singles had these heavy rock guitars in it, and that sound always intrigued me. So anywhere I could subsequently hear that kind of guitar sound, I'm listening to it. So if you think of any pop song this way, obviously the Run DMC stuff like I mentioned, but we had Owner of a Lonely Heart, something with a hard guitar in it, something I should not, as a little black kid in Brooklyn, growing up, be intrigued by. I'm drawn to it. But my family was pretty open-minded, so not necessarily with punk, but anything adjacent to hard rock was acceptable in my house, and I could listen to it on the radio and it would freak out. In terms of...
Gotcha. Well,
No, I'm trying to think of a band, something that really... I don't know that I realized these bands were punk bands, per se. I don't know if I had this image of what that was in my head. I knew what it was when I saw it, but I didn't have a name for it, in other words.
Yeah, and when I was young, so the first real representation of punk that I remember seeing in sort of mass media was from that movie in the 80s. And it was a remake of an older television show. It had Dan Aykroyd in it.
Okay. Yeah.
You remember that movie? And the punks were the bad guys. And so Dan Aykroyd was a cop, and his partner, I forget who his partner was, but they had to dress up like punks to go undercover.
Right.
And so that was my first real introduction. Oh, punks are bad guys. Nobody should be a punk. But then I heard all of this music, not really realizing
there was some sort of connection to it all. The hair metal bands, because I got into stuff mid to late 80s. Punk's on its way out in a visibly, and they're making fun of it at this point. You'll see the Mohawks on TV or in a commercial or something like that, or you'll see the colorful hair. I was the sound of the hard rock guitars or loud guitars, and a lot of the hair bands caught me. And I remember being in 6th or 7th grade, and a friend of mine, I'll never forget this kid, Ahmed. Ahmed was a Muslim kid. You wouldn't think he'd be into metal either, but football player's a little older than me. And he looks at me one day in the schoolyard. He's like, "You're a poser. You like all those hair bands like Cinderella and Rat." And You need to listen to some metal. You need to listen to Metallica. And Metallica was the first. I went out and got a cassette of Justice for All. Heard the first song, ripped off the headphones. Like, what was that? I've never heard anything that heavy in my life. And then I took a back route. After that, I grabbed everything I could get. That's when I started delving into true punk, like The Clash. The Clash is the first punk cassette. Not even a CD at this point, but a cassette that I bought. Right. And it was like Clash City Rockers or something like that. And then later on, Pistols. My thing was, I went to Catholic school. So late 70s, early 80s, Catholic school kids, good at hiding stuff. We went to school, I had nuns. So I remember my Appetite for Destruction album getting confiscated because there's a cross on it with some skulls on it. That got taken.
Right. And that was like the reprint album, right? Because the first cover
the first cover with the chick on it they had to pull all together. But kids would carve bands that were popular at the time onto the desks with the old school wooden desks. So the names stuck out. Black Sabbath, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, the Pistols, the Clash. These were all. So for years, I'm seeing these names, not realizing they're bands. And then now that I have a connection to Metallica and I know what the Clash is, I go back and I start listening to the Pistols and stuff like that. This is junior high.
And you know what I mean? And I think I had a similar journey. So my oldest sister is 8 years older than I am. And when she was in high school, she was dating like guys on the football team and stuff. And jocks back then are not like jocks now, so they were all into metal, right? So like they got me into Iron Maiden and Cinderella and Metallica and Anthrax and stuff like that. So that was my journey. And the first song I really remember hearing was more than just a song, right? Like a song that I heard and I was like, wow, there's more to music than just music. This is making me feel a way that I've never felt before. Was the Anthrax Public Enemy Bring the Noise.
Bring the Noise, yeah.
Like I heard that song and it flipped something internally for me. And that was like my route into
pretty much junior high, everything went that way and changed where it was like, all right, I'm never just going to go back and listen to rap again. What's funny is at the time, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't necessarily acceptable, at least in my little local community, for me to be listening to that. I remember being told, and someone said I was sheltered, went to Catholic school. You're in school with these same kids for all these years. Now we're going into high school, and I'm going to a public school for the first time. So the big thing on the street is, Clyde's going to have to watch himself in high school. You can't go around telling people you're into that kill your mother, kill your father music. This was what it was referred to at the time. I feel happy for these kids now, where a lot of that's gone. I went to there's a band called City Morgue, and they rap, but they call themselves trap metal, and it essentially it reminds me a lot of Onyx in the 90s. I don't know if you remember, Onyx was working with Biohazard.
Oh yeah, no.
Their whole set sounded like that. And the crowd, I couldn't have dreamed of a more diverse crowd than that. You know what I mean? Everybody was there. Yeah. All the pit rules were still in place. Everybody's picking each other up. They're looking out for each other. It was pretty awesome. And I'm like,
and I remember in the early mid '90s, like there was a lot of that crossover, especially in New York, with like the New York based hip hop groups. Rap groups working with or palling around with the New York hardcore.
Typo Negative was working with rappers. Biohazard was where a lot of the Brooklyn groups, a lot of the Brooklyn hardcore groups were working with hip hop acts as well.
Because I think we were all seeing the same injustices, just experiencing it differently.
Yes, I don't know if you remember the Judgment Night soundtrack. That's a classic, but. That was, I converted a lot of people into a lot of metal acts and rock acts based off of that.
And even with like Ice-T, like his rap stuff was amazing, but then he came out with Body Count.
Crazy,
and it was like, look, like we can do this stuff too, and we can do this really amazing.
I don't know our age difference, but my freshman year of high school was the first Lollapalooza.
Okay, you're a couple years older than me, but
not much,
not many. No, I think the first Lollapalooza was when I was in like 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. So high school for me was 90 to 94.
Okay.
So yeah, and even high school was a big leap into something else, because now I'm coming out of this little small community of people who don't know a lot about the music that I'd like to. And now I'm seeing kids with metal shirts at school. So I get to ask them and pick their brains. And of course, back then we're trading cassettes. That's how we're getting the music back and forth. And a friend of mine made me a tape of Jane's Addiction. Subsequently became they're in my top 5 for sure. Yeah. Huge. One of my first shows was Jane's Addiction. You'll laugh at my first show. Soundgarden.
What was it? Oh, that's not bad.
It was, I didn't even know what I knew it. I was into them. I had heard, what was the album that I had heard at that point? It was the one before Bad Motorfinger. So it was Louder Than Love. It was Louder Than Love. Okay. So I knew of them through that. Yeah. And they were so not well known at the time. That
because grunge hadn't hit yet, right?
We're talking 91 into 92. And they had just released Bad Motorfinger. The album release party was here in New York. WNEW was our hard rock station at the time. And if you can tell us what city these guys are from, there's free tickets to the album release. Instantly called Seattle. My father goes, picks up the ticket. I go. It was my first show, so I'm just like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe how loud this is. I can't believe there's a bunch of people who are going off and feeling the same way I do about this. And I was like 14. So it's a bunch of big dudes. I'm not going anywhere near the pit, the little pit that was forming up. It was, I was expecting like an industry kind of thing. I thought it would be suits. It was a crowd. It wasn't, I thought they'd play for maybe 5 minutes, but no, they played a full set, and that was it. Never looked back. And I think that at that point, when I first saw a rock band live, that's when I wanted to participate myself. That's what led me into saying, I want to get up there and scream into that mic too.
Yeah, the first concert I ever went to by myself was Kiss.
Really?
Yeah, and when I saw them, they were touring without their makeup.
So damn. Yeah, kind of.
It wasn't, but still I was still Kiss. And then my first punk show, it actually happened in Huntsville, Alabama, and it was, I don't remember all the bands that were playing. I want to say one of them was called Inside Lori. I think they're all like local bands, Inside Lori. And then like I went to 2 shows almost, like I went to one day and one the next day. So I went to 2 shows back to back. And there was a band called like Skeletal Earth. I don't remember the others. But one of them was this like 77 punk style. Like the singer looked like Darby Crash and he was spitting on people. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like I don't want to get spit on. That's gross.
That means they love you.
Like, I don't want to do that.
Don't love me that way.
But I loved the music. And then like the other bands, they were doing this fitting nonsense. And I was like, okay, cool. I want more of this. And one of my neighbors was really, a couple of my neighbors were really into punk, and they were older than me. And my parents just weren't around. So they're like, hey, do you want to go to the show with us? Yeah, let's go to the show. I don't know. Let's go. Yeah. And I was in, I don't know. I want to say I was in like 6th grade, maybe 5th or 6th grade, 6th grade, I think. I was about 12 for like my first introduction.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but for me, it took me a while from that, because then a couple years later, I moved up to DC where my mom was living, or Northern Virginia area, DC area where my mom was living. So it took me a while to like, I knew there was a scene, I knew there was stuff going on, but it took me a while to like find it and to connect with it. I guess going back to that question earlier, so going from the Bad Motorfinger release party, like how did you find like a community from there?
School. Like I said, once I started going to public school where you're coming up with more diverse kids from all over Brooklyn as opposed to just my little local area, I started meeting kids that were into different stuff. I started getting tapes from like the local, I didn't know there was a New York hardcore scene. Knew nothing about this. I got the bands. So someone gave me a Pigface tape, and then someone gave me a Murphy's Law tape, and then someone gave me an Agnostic Front tape. And it started happening like that. I didn't even realize these people were local. There's no internet for us to research where these people are from or what they even look like if you don't have a picture with the cassette or whatever you got. And you're getting your information through Rip Magazine or Circus or one of these magazines at the time. The information's pretty limited. There's one particular day, though. I had a couple friends that I gathered together that were all like-minded. my freshman year of school. The last day of school, sitting with 4 of these kids, and one of them goes, "Wouldn't it be cool? We had a band. None of us play instruments. We're all 14 years old. It's the last day of our freshman year. We're like, yeah, that would be cool." Ironically enough, 3 of these guys, we end up forming this band years later. But it's the same guys that I had that little dream with.
Nice.
Freshman year of high school. That ended up being the band. So it was a cool story when we were in our 20s. Going, how'd you guys meet? Oh, we've been playing together since high school. Yeah, it happened through school by accident. Just you end up in the right class with the right person. You ask them, hey, what do you listen to? And it happened from there. But high school was big. There was a big hardcore punk scene. And I didn't know there was conventions involved in it. I didn't know the separation between the old school punk and this new hardcore stuff. I didn't know what the aesthetic differences were. These guys are pulling up looking like they work construction. They got backpacks on stage, baseball hats, and Timberlands, and we look real New York up there compared to what I'd seen on TV. You know what I mean? The real like blue collar punk scene. I ended up, so we have this daydream in the beginning of high school. The following year, one of my friends picked up a guitar, one picks up bass. I had closet sang for years. I could sing whatever the hell I wanted to in any style. My voice hadn't changed yet, so I could go real high if I wanted to. We do all the Axl Rose stuff. We formed a little DS band. We called it Finger Soul. And Finger Soul was a joke on... My high school was right across the street from Brooklyn College. One day we're cutting class, hanging out there, and someone asked us, do we know where Finger Soul was? Ingersoll Hall is a hall in Brooklyn College. We've been drinking or whatever. So we heard Finger Soul. We named the band that. And we had this little Fisher Price, my first rock band, set up for 2 years while we were in high school, learning to play. I eventually picked up a guitar, but not with this group of people. There were it's always some older kids that get you really deeply involved. So I'm a sophomore in high school, and some seniors, they wanted to do a summer band, just a cover band. We ended up doing that, and it ended up doing pretty well. So that was my first gig.
Okay.
It's 92, 16 maybe. From that, the word started to get around. This guy can actually sing. He's pretty good. And I pretty much, the bass player from that summer band ended up in a big hardcore band. They needed a singer. I ended up joining that fall. Remember, this is a summer band, so that's it. It all ends in August or September. By October, I'm playing like big hardcore shows in New York, not having any real clue of there's a scene and it's this big and these. But I'm playing. I look at there's a flyer. It's got the band I'm in and Murphy's Law, like 2 of the biggest bands in that scene. I have no clue. I'm a kid. I'm just trying to get through the set, remember all the words, not get completely nervous up there. My dad shows up to the show, so he sees me jumping in a pit. He got balls to go up there and scream into that mic and say you're singing. He's like, the people seem to like it. And I was thankfully at a young age encouraged. There was no one hated on me and said, oh, what are you doing up there? There was none of that. It was completely the opposite. And that's when I realized, hey, there's like a community around this thing. There's a group of people from school showed up. And again, the word gets out even further. But that was mid-high school. Just being in bands drew me into the fact that there was a scene. I knew nothing until I got out of that basement or that rehearsal studio and actually got into a club. And I didn't get the pleasure of going to the shows. I did get the pleasure of playing those shows, though. So, still to this day, I'd rather be up there than watching.
Like the energy is different. Yeah. In my opinion, live punk show is a magical place to be. And no matter where you are at that show, like magic is happening. But in my opinion, like the 2 most magical places is one is on the stage, and the second is right in front of the stage.
Yes,
like right in front of the stage, you're just like you are the first person that all of that energy hits. Right,
for sure.
And you just have all this passion and emotion and everything just aimed directly at you. And you're just like the first person that wave hits. Yeah. But again, in my opinion, no matter where you are at the show, it's a magical thing.
I don't think I've ever been.
Either on the stage, that first row is...
The only time I'm not in that first row is if it's an arena show. If it's standing room, I'm bullying my way up to the front. Believe me. These days I might do it off to the side of the stage as opposed to dead center, but when I was a kid, I am going, until I get my way right up I don't want to be
Right.
10 feet back. I want to be right there.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So from that, like what did your progression, not just in punk, but like in music look like from there?
So that same punk band that I was in ended up getting some label interest. I'm 16 years old at the time. These guys are 24, 25 years old. They've been at it for a few years. They're looking to, I think it was Roadrunner, was trying to sign them.
Okay.
And Roadrunner says we'll put you on tour with a bunch of our acts, but the tour's going to be in Europe. I'm automatically not in that equation. I am not leaving school to go travel with a bunch of... So they subsequently kicked me out of this band. I had no stake in the songwriting. I didn't write any of the lyrics. I came in, the band is fully formed. Here, learn these words, learn these vocals, sing it. And I did it, and we started to move. About 6 months goes by, and this situation presents itself. So I get kicked out of this band, and I make a vow to myself that I'm going to pick up an instrument so that I can, in further situations, I can say, I wrote some of the songs, and you can't just throw me out of here that easily. And I still feel like sometimes some musicians don't value a vocalist in a rock setting. If you're just the singer, they kind of look at you like, anybody can sing. So I picked up the guitar at that point, and that point, the focus from punk switched over. I got more into, like I said, Jane's Addiction, the Chili Peppers. There's still a punk thing going on there. At least in the, not necessarily in the aesthetic, but the attitude of those bands was very free, very progressive, very open-minded group of people. Yeah. And I liked that sound. I liked what they were going for. So I started writing. So I picked up the guitar. I was about 16. Again, I now know a crap load of musicians at school. So I might have been playing about 2 months. And the guys at the jazz band at school, they look at me, and I hate to say it this way, but the director of the band was black. And he goes to me, "You got no brothers in the band, man. We need some brothers in the band." He goes, "Can you play an A minor?" And I play him the A minors. "Can you play an E chord?" I play an E chord. He's like, "All right, you got enough. Join the school jazz band. You'll get a straight A." From that experience, our school jazz band had some phenomenal musicians in it. So I had the pleasure of playing with a piano player who, while we were in high school, played Carnegie Hall. He had perfect pitch. He's one of those guys could hear a piece of music and just play it note for you. Yeah. Pierre gave me the confidence that I needed 2 months into my guitar playing to play with this full school jazz band who've been playing together for years. And again, from there, I'm getting involved with different communities of musicians. Flashback to my friends from freshman year of school. They're all now progressing on their instruments. We make another go at it. Doesn't really go anywhere, but we played a couple of little things for the school or whatever. This is in the middle of high school. I graduate high school, and the drummer from that jazz band in school goes, "I'm looking for a real serious college band, and I want to work with somebody I think is solid, and I think I want to work with you." Again, another phenomenal musician. My drummer was a classical percussionist, so anything you could hit, he was trained on it, xylophones and all. And we're kids, but he's got this amazing ability to play anything from like Lars Ulrich drums to Marky Ramone drums to whatever kind of drumming that we needed to be done, Latin percussion. He could do it all. And we set out to form what became our band, Fingersoul. Again, we just used the name we had from high school. We ended up calling two of the guys from that little squad, and from 96 to 2000, we were at it. We did the CMJ Fests, we were written up in the Village Voice. We were doing our thing. The labels that presented themselves were the shadiest of all. Yeah. And we fell apart, not because of money, but because everyone's graduating college by the time we got somewhere with it 4 years in. And it's starting, but the minute we started making money, the egos came in. No one knew how to talk to each other anymore, and that's what happened with that situation. But I have to say, right time, right place, and the right school. I went to a school that's still considered like one of the better academic schools in Brooklyn, in New York, actually, with high school. And we had just phenomenal musicians. So some of them took me under their wing and brought me along. And
that's cool. And I think, unfortunately, that happens more than people like to talk about, right? Like once egos getting involved, and once money becomes a part of it, and songwriting credits and all of that stuff, right? And I think that takes away from like our root cause of getting involved in the first place. Mm-hmm. Not taking it back to punk and hardcore too much, but what wasn't it? Ray B's from Warzone. Don't forget the struggle. Don't forget the streets. Right. Mm-hmm. And once all that other stuff gets involved, we forget that real quick.
Yeah. You said that. The last hardcore show I went to, New Year's Eve, 1999. I said, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down in this shit. And I went to see Murphy's Law at the Pyramid in New York. Pyramid was like a legendary spot for us. And I remember it was 99. We were all worried about 2K happening and everything was going kaput at the turn of the century. And I remember Jimmy Gestapo, the singer, goes, "Don't worry. If everything fucks up, I got a van outside. I'm taking us all back to Queens. I got your backs, all of you." But still, it was still that sense of, we're here. This is still, may have gotten a little older and things are completely different in 2000 than they were in the 90s, but we're still here.
Yeah, we're still all
you know what together. I mean? And it was funny to see them with tuxes. I played with them when I was like 15, 16. He didn't remember me. But that was the last true hardcore punk. I forget who else played, but Murphy's Law was phenomenal. They were awesome.
Yeah, so just going back to that, your early foundational music days coming up, what, like, is there anything that sticks out that, like, you still carry with you to today? Like, any ideas, ethos?
Absolutely. I had the pleasure in my early 20s to meet Ari Up from the Slits. She actually lived in Brooklyn for years, and she lived in my neighborhood, and we had mutual friends. And the bass player in my band would always go, "Yeah, I got this friend Ariana, and she sang in the Slits." And I'd heard of the Slits, never heard any of their music, but he kept bragging about her for a good year. She's trying to get the band back together, and blah, 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 blah. And she's in the History of Rock and Roll documentary. So he was blown away by this. I'd never heard the music. Yeah. She actually comes down to jam with us at a studio session, and I meet her, and she's got long dreadlocks. She had dreadlocks down to her, way past her, down to her knees, basically, and she was really tall. The Slits came up with the Clash and the Pistols. They were from that era. They came up late 70s, early 80s. Joe Strummer taught her to play the guitar. There were a couple of songs and a couple of bands that were becoming acceptable to the wider community, because I think just things were changing, you know. I remember the Beastie Boys' Check Your Head album being a big game changer, where we kind of bridged a gap. Judgment Night soundtrack. So all that stuff started to kind of change people's minds. But ultimately, I had to make a decision somewhere in the middle of high school. Like, am I trying to please everybody or trying to please myself? And at the end of the day, I'm much more, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to get into what I like. I don't care who likes it, who cares about it. If kids want to beat me up because I listen to, Metallica and not, Big Daddy Kane or whoever they wanted me to. And the funny thing is I listen to everything. You know what I mean? I listened to 50s jazz at the same time that I was listening to, PE and Anthrax and Metallica and Guns and, and all that stuff. High school was a little bit of a problem, but no one ever tried to beat me up. But there were definitely threats made here and there. You're not supposed to be listening to that. Like, who says? I'm the kind of personality, if you tell me that I'm not supposed to, I'll lean into it even further. So I didn't let that bother me for 1 second. Again, the people in the community were pretty accepting of me. And I still notice this to this day. I don't know if you get it. I'll do a show, I'll come off stage, and I'll get you get the congratulations, all good shit, whatever, that was great, I liked what you did. But then I largely get no one's talking to me after these shows. So I've never been able to figure out, is it because people don't want to approach me? Is it, I don't know what that is. But again, it's always been a little weird for me because I never really had the experience of sitting and watching these shows as much as being a participant in them. So you're seeing it a little bit differently than I'm just a person in this community. I'm a performer. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but I kind of came in a different way than most people. You're coming up getting a certain level of attention that you wouldn't normally get just as a fan, just sitting there. So I don't know that I'm any opposition to what I was doing or the vibe or the music that I was into. Again, when it did present itself as a problem, I beat it back. It was not something that I paid much mind to. I'm not sure. We started touching on it with, like the Beastie Boys and Anthrax coming out, and music started to change, where people started becoming a little more open-minded. You had this whole alternative thing where now it's not even it's a rock based thing, but there's other genres involved. So now it's kind of softening people up to the idea.
Well, yeah, and then, I mean, you had bands like Fishbone too, who were all over the place, right?
Yes.
I mean, just musically and what they were putting out there. I mean, just all over the place, and just amazing stuff. But like going back to your point, and again, this is I'm obviously a white person, so my experience is different. Is I never really understood like this is like white music and this is black music and this is whatever. Like, it just never made sense to me. Again, I realize I'm white in saying that, but just looking at the history of music, right? So, we've both mentioned Public Enemy a couple times. A couple years ago, there was a podcast that came out about the Clash, and Chuck D narrated that podcast.
Really? Okay.
And in the podcast, the first or second, episode of it, he's saying, without the Clash, without his love for the Clash, there wouldn't be a Public Enemy.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because without like reggae and ska,
yeah, for sure,
there'd be no Clash. So it's this cultural back and forth. So at what point in time, does really music belong to?
I think it's just like Ari Up told me. It's a media thing. It's more how people are marketing things than what the crowds actually. Right. Obviously, a guy like Chuck D can hear something, be influenced by it, and tell you about it. But if you read the paper, that you don't know necessarily, you wouldn't necessarily be led to believe that that's happening at all. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think it's much more acceptable now for these guys to genre hop the way they do than in our time. It was Judgment Night was a complete departure from everything. Just these guys working side by side, equal billing was a big, huge deal. And now it's kind of like normal. Right. Jay-Z did a whole album with Linkin Park. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I didn't even hear the album, but you know what I mean?
Well, and then even with like punk hardcore, you had Bad Brains, right?
Yes.
I mean, they were doing stuff
24/7 buys. Yeah.
They were doing stuff before anybody was thinking about it.
Yeah.
Just the speed and the ferocity and the lyrical delivery and just
100%.
And they were sort of all over the place as well because you'd be listening to that album, you're just like all this, and then all of a sudden there's this real chill, laid back like reggae song.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to attribute this quote to Louis Armstrong, but I believe he was being interviewed because he was playing the Newport Jazz Fest or the Newport Folk Fest.
Okay.
And they were, the interviewer was asking him, why are you playing a folk festival? You're not a folk musician. You're a jazz musician. And his response was, all music is folk music. I've never heard a horse sing a song. And that, I may have taken that, out of context somewhat or whatever. But I remember very clearly the first time I read that quote from him, and I was in high school. I was like 16 and 17 at the time when I read that quote from him. And that was from obviously a very much earlier interview than that, or time than that. And it just struck me because like my musical influences, my musical tastes are all over the place as well.
Yeah.
I love jazz. I love hip hop. I love punk. I love metal. I love folk. I love Americana. I love all over the place. And for me, when I'm listening to music, all I'm looking for is for something that makes me feel something, right?
Yeah.
I just want to feel. And there's plenty of music out there from all those genres that doesn't make me feel. But it doesn't matter what instruments are being played or what's not being played or how the person is singing or speaking or yelling or rhyming or whatever. Just like, I just want to feel.
For sure. I think what struck with me as a kid was everything I was listening to had kind of a rebellious aspect to it. So I could find that in rap. I could find that in rock. And it was equal down the middle at that point. I think both of those genres have lost some teeth over the years, obviously, but the more money they started to make. But, we were fortunate enough to have grown up around the time where it was still like it was a big deal to see a rap act on national TV. Mm-hmm. It was a big deal. I remember watching Guns N' Roses on live TV. They come up smashed and slash curses twice on live TV. We still kind of, I had a little bit of that going on. So
I think within the mainstream, you're 100% dead on. A lot of those people have lost their edge, but I think within like the underground DIY places, like that edge and that anger and that rebelliousness is still there.
Okay. Like I said, I mean, I took my son to see this band 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Like I said, they were described as trap metal. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've ever heard
City Morgue, right? That you were talking about City Morgue?
Yeah.
Okay.
City Morgue. They're playing like old school metal and punk in between sets. That's what also kind of made me feel good too, because they know that what they're doing now stands on the back of all that stuff. So there's Slayer in the middle of stuff, there's AC/DC in the middle of stuff, and then they're playing their original songs. The diversity struck me. The pit struck, because that was one of the gnarliest but safest pits I've ever seen. It was a bunch of kids that are like my son's age, all 17, 18 at the time. But they're all like teenagers, and they're actually like, it made me feel good, like the old man, because I'm there with the parents. Even the club, it was under 21. They all had if you were over 21, you had a wristband. There was barely any wristbands in that place. So it was all kids. They had their own venue. I knew some of the security in there. There was some kids smoking pot because it's legal up here, but I didn't see anybody doing anything crazy like in our time they would have been doing. Right. Any kids that passed out, there was a section for them. They were pulling kids out the crowd. They had a little triage, little section over there for them to sit down. They needed some oxygen, some water. They're there. You got a phone. You can call your parents if you need somebody to pick. That was like the tightest thing I've ever seen in like the 2020s in terms of like a punk rock thing that was still kind of old school, but to date. And I was proud of those kids. They were much better human beings in that setting than I remember being at that age.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Going along all the same lines, that is what I'm starting to see more at shows, is bands having like Narcan and like feminine health products like on their merch tables for free.
Really?
Yeah.
We joked about that years ago. And now it's a thing.
Yeah. Again, you're not going to go see, Blink 182 and find that on their,
right,
merch booth, right? But
100%.
But the more local, the more independent stuff, that belief in taking care of each other is still, very much there and very much a part of the ethos.
That's awesome. I mean, I don't even know where the venues are anymore. You know what I mean? Once upon a time, growing up in Brooklyn and being a Brooklyn band, we would have to travel into Manhattan. There weren't many clubs in Brooklyn. I played a few of the clubs that were in Brooklyn, but they were more local bars with a stage. Mm-hmm. They weren't set up for live acts. They just happened to have an area, and they'd get a couple of kids from the local bands to come by and play for a few bucks if they could pack the bar. But then Manhattan, we had CBGBs, we had the Pyramid, we had Brownies, we had all these spots that, were known. And now it's, fast forward how many years later, it shifted the other way around, where all the spots in the city that were the legendary punk spots are gone. CBGBs along with it.
Right.
And now the spots are in Brooklyn. So that's even strange to me. So that's also a reason I haven't been able to really check it. I just moved back to Brooklyn a few years back. I had left Brooklyn for about 12 or 13 years. And I was living further north. Yeah, the venues have changed. I need to just stick my head back into the world and see what's out there. The spots are actually close by now.
Yeah,
we would have to trek into Manhattan 45 minutes on a subway, or if somebody had a van, they'd drive us in or whatever. Now stuff is in 5-minute driving distance, like venues, and I'm like, okay, this is new. I gotta, now that I'm back in Brooklyn, I gotta get into it and see what's out there.
Yeah, you should, because there's, there's some stuff out there that I'm just, not into. I'm not a big fan of like the beatdown stuff. But there's a lot of really good up and coming bands out there right now that are just doing amazing stuff. So I would recommend sticking your head back in and just seeing what's going on.
Hey man, send me some links to some stuff that you like, and I'll start from there.
Yeah,
Next time we see each other, we'll compare notes.
Nice. And we'll get into that in a minute. But to be respectful of your time, we've been talking a good bit, so I'm going to start wrapping this up. Sure. So a couple questions left. The first one is, currently in the crazy world we live in, what gives you hope?
Believe it or not, the kids. At one point or another, we were those kids that they doubted. That they had no faith in. And here we are, 30-something years later, somehow landed on our feet. So some of these kids, I remember maybe 2 years ago, I'm doing laundry at a laundromat. So I got the big laundry bags. I'm headed to the car, and this kid walks into the laundromat. I'm looking at his outfit, and I shouldn't have done that. But I'm looking at the outfit. The underwear is showing because the pants are really low. He's got this huge belt buckle on, and the belt's got rhinestones and bullets on the side of it. It's got the gold fronts in, and this is not a look that turned me off per se, but I had an idea in my mind of how this kid would be based on how he looked, which, God forbid someone did that to me when I was a kid, I'd have been pissed. But here I am as an older guy doing it in my mind, not saying anything to this kid or anything. The kid comes up and throws me. He's like, "Excuse me, sir, can you smell with those bags?" "Oh, give me." Grabs the bag from me, walks me to the car, like that type of deal. Totally respectful, held the door for me, wished me a good day. And I'm like, here I am, being one of those old people that used to look at me when I was that age and do the same damn thing. And what place do I have to do that? Yeah. You know what I mean? This kid was so respectful and so cool. And thankfully, I don't know if it's me or just my good luck, that when I've had to have interaction with people, teenagers, young adults, in New York at least, from my little limited area in Brooklyn, they've all been pretty respectful. You see some crazy stuff too, but then it's kids. So, but when I do see one that's well-spoken, regardless of how crazy I might think they're dressed, they're well-spoken and polite and respectful, that gives me a lot of hope. Yeah. You know what I mean? We may think we're not in good hands, or these kids are completely warped from the smartphones, but some of them will be okay.
What are you listening to right now?
Old stuff. Old stuff.
That's fine.
I'm trying to think of something that's not. I've been going deep diving into the 70s stuff. Okay. So and sometimes, you're on YouTube and you like certain things and other things pop up in your feed. There's this group that I never knew the name of the group. I grew up listening to this song. This is a 70s song. And I thought it was a Jackson 5 song because the singer's got this very high kid voice. And it was a young, the group's called the Sylvers, Sylvers, but it was a family group, R&B band. This is like the last 2-3 days. I'm just going into a deep dive of this band because the guy sounded so much like Michael Jackson as a kid, and the production quality of it too, and just the bass lines to the music is awesome. Listening to a lot of the Verve Jazz Masters compilations lately, so I've listened to a lot of Louis, a lot of Dizzy. In terms of rock-based stuff, who was it this week? Who was this? Is Mozzie. Okay. I always go back in time to go forward. Again, I'm always open to new music. The problem is, I've come to this conclusion: our ears mature and then they kind of sit in a particular place. Not that we're not into new stuff, but we're now listening to it with older ears. Right. And you're now hearing what it reminds you of, instead of just listening to this group on its own merit. At least my brain works that way. I start taking the music apart. I start going, oh, it kind of has a Black Sabbath thing going on, and it kind of has a little Clash thing going on, or it has a this going on. And I do that. I still enjoy it, but I can't help but pull the music apart in that fashion. But my taste will change in a day. Yeah. I'll go from Bob Marley to like Metallica real quick, and then back to like De La Soul or something. De La Soul's got a new album out that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet, but
it's pretty cool. Yeah, I had reservations about them even doing one. Now that two passed, but they did it justice. It's just like when Tribe Called Quest did that last album, and Fife had just passed away. It was a similar situation. Yeah, they did it. They It's like Soundgarden or like Faith No More. These certain groups don't put out really bad albums or anything. You may like it, you may not like it, but it's not terrible. Give that New Day a good listen. Cool. It's pretty solid.
Okay, last question, and it doesn't have to be punk umbrella related at all. But what do you think people should be listening to right now?
Well, I'll preface this by I have an old belief. I've been saying this one for years. When people are in a bad mood, I'm like, you can't ever go wrong listening to Bob Marley. I've never heard anybody stay upset listening to Bob Marley. If you're in a bad mood, put on some Bob Marley. If it doesn't cheer you up, something's wrong with you.
I can back that statement up. I can back up that emotion.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
There's timeless music is what I've always looked for.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to being in Catholic school and seeing the name Black Sabbath on the desk and not realizing who Black Sabbath was or what they meant, what was built on that. When I did get into Black Sabbath, I realized I'm listening to like the building block of a genre. So I would always tell, like my son's a musician now, he plays guitar. I always recommend The Root. Whatever he's listening to, I listen for where their influences are, and I tell the kids to go back in time. Where did so-and-so get this sound from? You like the Chili Peppers. Where did that guitar sound come from? It comes from Jimi Hendrix. Where did Jimi Hendrix get his sound from? So I'm always like, go to the classic people of every genre and listen to them, and you'll have a pretty good understanding of most genres of music. You're going to listen to folk or something, go Dylan. You know, you're going to heavy metal, go Zeppelin. You know, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
You know?
Cool. Well, I'm going to make a recommendation here. So, new band out of DC called Loose Leash. Really good, younger band. Just released an EP, and I've been playing it, probably nonstop for the last week or so. Just really, really digging it.
If they have any YouTube or a website or anything, just text it to me. I'll check it out as soon as we're done.
Yeah, I will. Is there any place anybody can go to like find your music if they want to look up stuff?
No. So this is a conversation I mean to have with you offline. Because, one of my little struggles now is, time has passed. We're older. Yeah. You kind of struggle with yourself, at least I do, with who's going to listen to this? Does anybody want to hear it? Is it still any good? Is it, you know what I mean? So I do go through that. And not having a band, I've got tons of stuff that I haven't put out. So it's like, I think Cardi B is the most prominent new artist, or she took 6 years to put out a second album. And it was kind of, when I heard her do an interview, it was the same reasons that I had. We were all kind of, have these security issues and stuff like that. But no, for the time being, not really. I do have some stuff I'm going to be putting out soon. But again, sometimes some of us need a little push over the edge to just say, you know what, let the world hear it. So that's kind of where I'm at, to be honest.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay, my friend. Well, thank you so much for...
Thank you for having me.
Doing this. I really appreciate your time. For all those who listen to this, thank you as well. I appreciate y'all. I have social media. I'm not good at it. Instagram is the best one. It's, so punklovecompassion@yahoo.com if you want to email me. If you want to come on, you think somebody else should come on, you have connections to, reach out to me as well. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, my friends, have hope. And we'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks so much, man.